May I please the court?
Yes, ma'am.
This is a tale as old as time, as you were told in the opening. It involved an affair, a pregnancy, and a murder. But there was a fourth aspect of this case that is equally as important, and that's deception. The defendant was the center of the affair, certainly the pregnancy, and most definitely the murder. But the evidence has also shown that she was the center of the deception. In fact, she is a master of deception. I guess the correct term would be mistress of deception, but master of deception is a little bit more common. As you learned during the trial, the defendant and the victim had 4 children together. You actually heard from their oldest child. And think of the strength that that took Savannah to come in and testify against her mother in the murder of her father. They had 4 children, but they had been separated for about 10 months to a year before Greg Rice was murdered. They still had that connection of children, as you always do when you share children with someone else. And as you review the exhibits, because you'll get to bring them back into the jury room with you, you will see that their conversations were mainly about the children, about Greg wanting to pick up the children. When can he see them? So that was the tie that bound them together. The defendant, meanwhile, was involved in body transports. She comes into contact with Christopher Dontel during the course of her work, and she sets her sights on him for some reason.
Thank you,
She begins to show up at his favorite restaurant. She ingratiates herself to him, and they begin an affair. She infiltrates the Dontels' marriage and life. She moves to their community. She showers them with gifts. She and her children spend, if this was COVID, Erica Dontel testified that they spent almost all the time together, her family and his family. And then she began to spin her web of lies because she wanted to destroy the Dontels' marriage. But she also wanted to get rid of Greg. And so she started to frame him for revealing information about the affair. You may recall that during the trip to Florida, that was the defendant, Mr. Dontel, Savannah, and one of Savannah's friends, the defendant showed Dontel one text message. All I can say is wait for the storm. And based on this text message, she told Dontel that she was terrified of the victim. Didn't want to be near him. He was hell-bent on hurting her. You have to come with me. I'm going to confront him, but you need to be there because he is going to hurt me. Remember, all I can say is wait for the storm. But, and I know it took a little bit for Lieutenant Wells to read through that whole conversation, but especially here, the context of that one text is extremely important. Because you should recall, and again, you will have the exhibit in your room with you, that the conversation was about the children. Greg did not know that the defendant and Dontel were in Florida. He thought they were in Ohio. He was caring for the other 3 children, and the defendant had stayed away longer than she had told him she would.
Shout out to STS,
and his
dropping
job
5
was
more
suffering
subs.
as a result. He couldn't work because he had to care for the children. And so that's what, he continually caught her in lies. You told me you were going to be home yesterday. You told me you had a court date. I'm tired of all these lies. So the storm was to expose the lies. I don't trust a word you say. Everything is always riddled with half-truths and lies, so I'm going to start letting people know the truth. Not, I'm going to kill you, I'm going to hurt you. It's, you lie to me, and your lying to me affects my life. And people need to know that they can't trust what you are going to say. Again, if you look at the entire conversation, you will see that Greg is saying, thanks, just text me when they're ready, please. Hope your day is going well. Boy, that sounds like someone who is out to hurt someone, right? When can I pick up the kids? I hope your day is going well. Greg was not threatening the defendant. Greg's only concern was seeing and caring for his children. The defendant, on the other hand, so go ahead and run your fucking mouth again. Thanks for being an ass about it. Who in that text conversation was more aggressive. It was the defendant, not Greg Rice. Greg Rice had no intention of hurting Meagan Jackson. So the defendant comes up with this scheme that she is going to expose her affair with Christopher Dontel, but she's going to pin it on Greg Rice. So she begins with these text-for-free messages. One of them included the list of the 4 people who had gone to Florida. That couldn't have come from Greg because he had no idea where she was. He thought she was in Ohio. He certainly didn't know that she was with Christopher Dontel because otherwise that would have come out in the text. So this text came from Meagan Jackson. How else do we know that the defendant is the one who sent these text-for-free messages? If you look at, there was one IMGBB link that you can make out. This is what pulls up. At the top of that is Christopher Dontel's number, meaning that this is a photo, not even just a capture. This is a photo, someone taking a photo of the defendant's phone and sending that, uploading it to IMGBB and sending it to Erica. Lieutenant Wells showed you that text conversation in the defendant's phone. How would Greg get the defendant's phone in order to take a photo of this text conversation and send it? How would he even know about this text message? And if you read the content of this text message, believe me, it was specifically chosen to hurt Erica the most.
That's a
Then,
good point.
when that didn't work, the defendant started this, she sort of upped the ante a little bit. She started talking about a package is going to be coming in the mail. And already she's, again, blaming Greg. Blaming Greg. And let me actually backtrack for 1 minute with the text-for-free messages. Don't forget that when Erica said to her husband, call her now, and they called the defendant, who did the defendant say was sending those messages? It's got to be Greg. There's no evidence in the record that Greg cared a whit about who the defendant was sleeping with. All he cared about was his kids. But when the text-for-free text did not work, she begins this campaign about a package coming in the mail. And again, she's blaming Greg. So this is really a win-win situation for her. She's telling Dontel to intercept the package. Okay, well, if he doesn't intercept the package, then number one, it hurts Erica, perhaps drives a bigger wedge in their marriage. But Dontel is going to think that Greg is trying to destroy their marriage. But if Dontel does intercept it, again, there's still that notion in the background, look what Greg is doing. Look what Greg is trying to do to your marriage. So she had started this little campaign about the package on September 28th. And then on September 30th, we see, and I tried to put the exhibit numbers here so you'd be able to reference them if you wanted to. We see on her web searches that she searched for the location of both the UPS store and the FedEx store, or that she was actually at those two locations, further indicating that she is the one who sent the package. Even more telling is the fact that she deleted her search for the location of where the FedEx store is. How many people here have ever gone to the trouble of deleting a search for a location as bland as FedEx? Further evidence that she was trying to frame Greg for sending this package. So Dontel was able to intercept the package, and you may recall that he said, I opened it up, I didn't look a lot at it, I just brought it over to the defendant, but it was photo collages and pictures of text messages. So then we move on to the notepad, the links in the defendant's notepad. Now remember that she started these text messages about the package coming on the 28th. Well, on the 27th, she starts uploading all of these images into IMGDB, setting the stage. And again, notably, October 2nd, she sends that to the trash. But Lieutenant Wells was able to access each one of those IMGBB links, which she was also able to show you were cached in the defendant's phone. Now, these are just some of them. I think it was exhibits 100A through S, right? But if you look at these text conversations with Dontel's number at the top, photo collages, exactly what Dontel saw in the package. And then also, while this is going on, while the defendant is feeding Dontel this pack of lies about Greg is trying to expose the affair, I'm so scared of Greg, we have evidence of further malice towards the victim, where there was a text message about popping a tire. I'm all for popping a tire now. So the package still doesn't work. Dontel is still married. He's still married to this day. Whether you agree with her decision or not, Erica Dontel did not leave her husband when word of the affair came out. Did not leave her husband when word of the pregnancy came out. Did not leave her husband when he was arrested for murdering his lover's baby daddy. Still has not left him. So the defendant's campaign to destroy that marriage didn't work, but she kept trying. So then we get to the H-Gate email. And if you recall, this H-Gate email, which was sent on October 1st, but there was evidence that the defendant's phone had accessed that account on September 27th with a password that was stored in the keychain of her phone. So she's accessing that email account a full 4 days before this email is sent. And the email is sent, so let's widen the web a little bit here. It's not working that I just send things to Erica Dontel. Now the defendant's including Erica Dontel's sister and father. Maybe this will work. Maybe this will break up the marriage. Again, trying to blame it on Greg, but how is Greg going to get these images? These are all clearly from the defendant's phone. And Lieutenant Wells told you that he found them in the defendant's phone. So while she is saying at every chance she can get, Greg is doing this, Greg is trying to expose the affair, this is all Greg's fault, it is clearly her fault. And when this still doesn't get the desired result, the next step of the plan goes forward. So this email was sent on October 1st. Now we go to October 2nd. And they go to the preserve where they have been on the 29th, the 30th, and now the day of the murder. And they engage in target practice. So on October 2nd, they were together all night. Christopher Dontel told you that, but the evidence tells you that also. As you think through Christopher Dontel's testimony, think of how it's corroborated by phone records, surveillance videos, LPR photos, starting when they left their community, the community that the defendant moved into, knowing that the Dontels already lived there. So they're leaving their community within moments of each other. And the phone activity shows the same thing. They go to the preserve, again for target practice. We see both cars leaving. We saw them coming in as well, but there they are leaving. There are the phone records showing that both phones are hitting off the tower that serves the preserve. Then they go to Abuelo's, seated at the bar together. Again, the phone records show that they were together all night. All the way through to 11:06, 11:07 p.m., the last connection that Greg's phone makes to any tower. We ran the surveillance video for you from Just Ask Hal, or the Lowe's food parking lot. You see the defendant's van and Dontel's Ford Explorer. You see them, you never see Greg. Why? Because he was being stored in the Myrtle Beach Funeral Home cooler. We know that the defendant was the last person to talk to Greg Rice. Twice. First she calls at 9:45, and then again at 9:58. And at that point, Greg Rice starts walking towards the Clay Pond Road entrance to the Arrowhead community. They leave Arrowhead at the same time. Again, supported by the phone records. And we know what happened during that 6 or 7 minutes in the Arrowhead community. Christopher Dontel testified he was driving the defendant's van. As they're pulling down Arrowhead Boulevard, they see the victim walking down the road. Dontel begins to pull over, and the defendant says, "No, turn around, make a U-turn and pull up in front. Don't be awkward." And then as soon as he pulls up, the defendant jumps out of the car and fires multiple shots, killing Greg Rice. And what's interesting is every single shot is on the left side of the body. So picture this, that the van is in front of me. I'm Greg Rice, I'm walking up, door opens, I see the defendant hop out with a gun in her hand, and I start turning to run for my life. Shot, 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 shot. He saw it coming. Now, the defense made quite a bit of, well, everyone, like Captain Wilson, did you park in the lot? Did you go to the sidewalk? Did you walk up to the apartment? Did anyone say shots fired? Did you see any crime scene? Focusing first on whether or not there were any calls about shots being fired, I suggest that anyone who has lived in Horry County for any length of time has heard gunshots. And quite frankly, if you called the police every time you heard gunshots, you wouldn't have time for much else. But what you should also consider is where the shots happened. Next to this 8-acre tract. And there was testimony, I believe it was by Sergeant Jones, that a shot from a .22 caliber, which is what the murder weapon was, is much softer than, say, a 9mm or a .357 Magnum. But the fact that no one called in shots fired is really of no moment. Again, we go back to the last data connection that we have with Greg Rice's phone. And as you were watching that sort of animated slide, Sergeant Marcus loves these animated slides, puts them in every presentation. But if you looked at that animated slide detailing the last sort of life of Greg Rice's phone, you will notice that Greg's phone is tracking with the defendant. At one point in that animation, it was geolocation data of the defendant with Greg Rice's phone. Christopher Dontel also told you that after they had stored the body in the funeral home, at some point in the evening, the defendant wanted to go back and get some of Greg's belongings so that she could plant them at the apartment and kind of give life to this missing person story. Well, how do we know that that is accurate? Because he told you about a trade embalmer. I learned a lot about the business of death in this case. I never knew that there was a trade embalmer, someone that would show up at a funeral home at midnight to embalm a body. But sure enough, they did. And again, geolocation data shows that the embalmer's wife, Joanne Cusack, was at the Myrtle Beach Funeral Home at the same time as Meagan Jackson, her geolocation data. And that's at 12:38 at night. So, based on everything that we had seen so far, all the evidence that has been entered, the defendant was charged with murder. Now, typically, the prosecution and the defense fight over just about everything. But I cannot imagine a reasonable argument that Greg Rice was not murdered. Shot a minimum of 5 times, and dumped in a river to be found 5 weeks later. So then what it is up to you to decide is the defendant guilty of the murder? Certainly by Mr. Dontel's testimony, she is. If you have any hesitation about that, then South Carolina has hand of one, hand of all. If they were acting together, and you heard that he had originally been charged with murder and criminal conspiracy and accessory after the fact, entered a plea with no agreements with the state to criminal conspiracy and accessory after the fact. So if you think, well, maybe Dontel did it and not the defendant, you go back to this hand of one, hand of all, which says that it doesn't matter. Two people can be guilty of killing another when only one of them has a gun and only one of them fires a shot. But I would suggest to you that there should be no question in your mind who fired the multiple shots that killed Greg Rice. Because all you need to do is look at who benefited from his murder. Christopher Dontel and Erica Dontel never met Greg Rice. Never. The news of the affair and the pregnancy was already out. So what benefit would it be to kill Greg Rice? You can't stuff that secret back in the bag. And as I said before, the news of the affair and the pregnancy did not end Dontel's marriage. The defendant is the only one who benefited from Greg's murder, and I think that's evident in the seeds that she planted along the way. In a moment, after defense closing and the judge's charge, you will be asked to render a verdict. Verdict in Latin means to speak the truth, something I would suggest the defendant has an extremely difficult time doing. But it is your job to end the defendant's continued deception and speak the truth and convict her of murder. Thank you.
All right, chat, what do we think? What do we think of the prosecution's closing argument? I thought they did... Oh, I'm off the screen. Where am I? Okay, I'm here. I thought they did a great job. They got a whole bunch of stuff in evidence, and they didn't really harp on it during testimony with witnesses on the stand. They just got it into evidence and then relied on it to make their arguments in a linear fashion in closing. And that's kind of what you'd expect of trials, but when we're used to watching things like YSL and Karen Reed, I think Hank was just... We don't really know for sure what happened, even though we're supposed to tell you we know what happened beyond a reasonable doubt. You know, it's just nice to see a concise closing argument. And here's what we have. Here's what we're asserting happened. And it's your job, jury, to determine the truth based on the evidence presented to you. Nothing more, nothing less. With that, defense will be next. I wonder if it's going to be the same attorney that did openings, because we haven't really seen much of him after like the first day. So for Always Forever for Life is pretty good. Plans and Pen says, if Greg didn't care who she was sleeping with, why kill him? Maybe I'm overthinking it. That's a question I have. I'm still confused on the pregnancy. Like, was it truthful? Whose kid was it? If she was pregnant? Like, there's some gaps there. There are some gaps. STS as a book editor would be satisfied with the outline. I like that. I like that. Gap Girl, good to see you, says good evening. Hey, I'm only 2 o'clock over here. We've still got afternoon vibes going on. Also, huge shout out while we were doing the closings from the state. Taybiz TV came in and sponsored 5 gifted memberships, so make sure you're saying thank you to Taybiz if you got one from him. And then STS, another 5. So we had 10 gifted subs. So if you're suddenly green, thank Taybiz, thank STS. Super generous of them to do that, and they don't have to do it. Yeah, STS is thinking no way she was pregger. The timing of that just seems like it was to her own benefit to say she was and just maybe send this fake sonogram picture and hope it doesn't get questioned. Factual Lie says, was Greg insured? Now, I mean, I don't specifically know the details of that. I think that that's something that might... There's a few cases against Meagan, open. But there was, I think it was from The Independent. The Independent did an article on this case in the early days. And they mentioned that, I think Megan Jackson's mom died kind of unexpectedly. And they didn't really go into much detail, but they mentioned it in the article. And so, like, this insurance idea is, it's always a reason, right? Always a reason. People wild out when it comes to the opportunity to come up on a bunch of money. So, Plans and Pen says, I think she just wanted to unalive someone and had her sights set on Greg, like, making her seem unhinged. And that's the thing. If she's saying something in these texts, and then Christopher Dantel responds like, haha, something to the effect of kind of being with that in regards to the brake line and popping the tires. Could he be serious when he says that? Sure. Could he also just be like, she's saying that in jest, so I'm gonna haha with it, and I'm not conceptualizing or even thinking that she might be dead serious about what she's saying. I'm just having this conversation back and forth. That's another possibility. So Gap Girl, will I be streaming the Sandra Birchmore trial? Maybe, but that's another case where I feel like there's so many people that have followed that in depth, in detail, where, I probably would lean towards being in the bleachers on that one, right? And learning from those who have done the deep dive and focused in on it. And that's, guys, so Sandra Birchmore, I think that's like coming up. At least like pre-trial stuff, pre-trial happenings. There's starting to be more momentum there. And yeah, for Always Forever for Life, her facials show that she doesn't really care one way or the other. That's how I read the expressions as well. I'm not sure how well the jury can see her face, but, if they can see it, they can judge it. So, let's get to the defense closing arguments, you guys. Let's see what they do, and let's see who's doing it.
Your Honor.
She's just going to take this down, Your Honor. So.